This is Viva Fry.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Kreiner.
Hey, this is Brad Wall.
This is JP Sears.
Hi, this is Frank Peretti.
This is Tammy Peterson.
This is Danielle Smith.
This is James Lindsay.
Hey, this is Brett Kissel, and you're listening to the Shaun Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Wednesday. How's everybody doing? You know, I should have had it up, but I'm going to pull it up right now. Okay, Silver Gold Bull. We got the Cornerstone Forum, them and Bow Valley Credit Union, bringing the Cornerstone Forum to Calgary here in just a few weeks. Okay, and last time I checked, like literally, this morning, 7 tickets. No, 12 tickets. 12 tickets. I think it's 12 tickets left. I think it's just over a table. That was the last time I checked. We are getting awfully tight, and we're going to have that place, filled to the rafters, as they say. It's going to be a fun day. So if you haven't got your tickets, go grab your tickets. That's thanks to Silver Gold Bull and Bow Valley Credit Union for bringing the Cornerstone Forum back to Calgary, March 28th. Yes, it's all down in the show notes. Now, what I was pulling up is the price of silver. We have $1.1327. It's down 7.3% today here in Canada. That's Canadian dollars. It'll be interesting to see as, everything plays out in Iran and everywhere else. Gold down below $7,000 Canadian, now 69.66, 69. Interesting. Just watching the gold and silver markets, especially with everything going on in the world. When it comes to precious metals, I point you all to the Silver Gold Bull. They got all their in-house solutions while they're buying, selling, or storing precious metals. You can text or email Graham for details with any questions you have around investing in precious metals or for feature silver deals exclusively for you, the SMP listener. That's all down in the show notes. Text Graham and you can get more details. I was bringing up Bow Valley Credit Union and the Cornerstone Forum. While Red Deer, you have your lending and advice center now open. It's all about lending, deposits, and real financial advice. You can open accounts, talk through lending options, and get help with banking, all in a space designed for conversations and not transactions. If you want smarter banking with gold, silver, Bitcoin, sound money, and personal freedom, head to bowvalleycu.com. And if you're wondering who to trust with all your savings, Integrated Wealth Management, they're a full-service wealth management firm that actually manages money, watching client portfolios daily and making real-time adjustments with markets change. I'm actually having Andrew on the show tomorrow, so if you want to find out more about iWealth, you can. Tomorrow, Andrew is on. They see the same things you and I see. Massive government spending, rising instability, a lot of risk in government debt, so they use tools like precious metals and commodities to help protect your purchasing power. Most importantly, they work with people who share their values, family, community, hard work, living within your means, and personal freedom. And if that sounds like you can find out more about them at i-wealth.ca. That's i-wealth.ca. They also have a webinar happening this coming Tuesday, so just a few days away, and you can get signed up for it, and you can figure out if it's a right fit for you and your family. Diamond 7 Meats here in Lloydminster, family-run business. Talking about family. A family-run business with over 26 years of service, offering more than just retail cuts. They provide livestock processing for farmers and ranchers in Saskatchewan and Alberta, including custom sausage making for both domestic and wild game. If you don't have your own animals, their retail sales can connect you directly with producers offering sides, quarters of beef, pork, and lamb, and they can get your freezer filled, right? And just crazy times with all the stuff in food, in meat, and you just go to, maybe just give Diamond 7 a call, all right? 306-825-9718. They're here in Lloydminster. You can find them on Highway 17 and 67th Street North. Caleb Taves, Renegade Acres, once again, the community spotlight this week, folks. Cornerstone Forum, March 28th. There is not a whole lot of tickets left. And it is going to be, I think, I don't want to overstate it, I feel like it's going to be an electric Saturday. And if, the speakers don't do it for you, the community that's showing up certainly will. Lots of great people coming in from all over the place. If you're watching or listening on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, Substack, make sure to subscribe, make sure to leave a review, make sure to comment, make sure to shoot me a text on the phone. I appreciate when people reach out and say hello and toss me out a thought or two, and I'd love to read some of those on the text line. If you're on Substack, you can always become a paid subscriber, help support what I do here, and get a few behind the scenes. All right. That's enough rambling for today. Let's get on to that tale of the tape. Today's guest is a Canadian journalist, lecturer, historian, and founder of the Canadian Patriot Review and co-founder of the Rising Tide Foundation. I'm talking about Matt Ehret. So buckle up. Here we go. Welcome to the Shaun Newman Podcast. Today I'm joined by Matt Ehret. Matt, thanks for being on.
Hey, Shaun, it was a pleasure.
You know, when I put out invites to people and then world events happen, things kind of change. I'm kind of like, we're going to talk about this, and then, I don't know, country starts getting bombed, and you're like, Matt's already texting me because we're not going to talk about that. So plans change. A, it's good to see you. And two, it's going to be exciting, before we get into some of the heavier stuff, it's going to be great to see you here in like 26 days, 25 days by the time this airs, or 24 days. I actually can't even remember anymore. It's coming up quick. We're into March now. I don't know where that came from, but going to see you in Calgary here pretty darn quick. And at the time of recording this, 13 tickets left. So, she is going to be a full house.
Wow. Yeah, no, I'm absolutely looking forward to this. It was a really exhilarating experience last year to participate in that forum, and I'm looking forward to doing something similar. But based on the roster you've sent out, it looks like it's going to be even bigger in terms of quality. I would imagine in terms of the quantity as well, but definitely you got Daniel Smith coming. That's incredible that you were able to pull that one off. So yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Fingers crossed it still happens. I mean, I say that, but I'm like, now we're into this weird 26-day window where I hope a giant snowstorm doesn't hit the East Coast and cancel all the flights. Like, I'm watching that and I'm going, thank goodness that was earlier than where I'm heading, because, we're in this weird world where I just hope everything, not magically. On this side, I'm praying about it. Okay, that all aside. Iran gets bombed, then they turn around and fire missiles at, I forget if it's 8 different countries and everything going on. Matt, your thoughts? I don't know. There seems to be, I was saying this the other day, and maybe I'm wrong on this, and I'm very curious your thoughts. Right? There's probably more trains of thought than this. There's 2 that I follow or seem to follow. One is obviously Tom and Susan Kokinda and that group, City of London. This is an attack on, the inner workings, the underground of what's happening there. And, when you look at Trump's track record of Venezuela, dealings with some things in Mexico, then, now Iran again, because they did bomb Iran not that long ago. You can kind of, okay, all right. Then there's the Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens group of people where this is something a little more nefarious. The state of Israel and kind of the control mechanism there. I don't know. Your thoughts. You're a guy who reads a ton. We've had lots of different conversations on Canada and how it's tied to different things and how the inner workings of that goes. When you wake up Sunday morning sometime and you see what's going on, what goes through your mind? What are you staring at? Your thoughts?
Yeah, and just so people know, you and I were planning on doing something totally different. That was also strategic, but not really. It wouldn't have dealt with the giant elephant in the room that people would have been having on their mind, which is this current war drive, or this current war that's just been unleashed. And we were originally going to be discussing the rebellion, why the rebellions of Upper and Lower Canada failed in 1837 and 1838. What can patriots learn from today? And, hopefully sometime down the line we can have that conversation, because there's a lot of big lessons there's a lot of similarities. Let's just say that.
We'll see how this conversation goes. Maybe I'll just ask you about it a half an hour in so we can talk back on similarity. Anyways, doesn't matter, because I'm still interested in that. Yeah.
Anyways. That might happen. So, okay. But this is the more important thing to talk about. So let's do that. There's definite differences between what is happening right now in Iran and what we have seen in the case of Venezuela, of Mexico, which are it's just a different thing, right? Like we could see that the Venezuelan military intervention, people were talking for weeks and weeks beforehand about how this would be potentially a terrible new Vietnam, an insane war. It actually turned out to be relatively clean, relatively. There was a security detail that was killed from Cuba that was protecting Maduro, but it seems like there was already a pre-planned negotiation, an extraction, it seems. And overall, the same government, Delcy Rodriguez, is still in play, in power. There was, apparently, at least for a limited time, the agreements, the economic contracts that Venezuela had signed with China, with Russia, to export petrol, that was still respected, at least for a time. Of course, the U.S. has a more strategic hold on the economy, on the oil, but still, it was not the worst case scenario. It was relatively clean. In the case of Mexico, we're seeing U.S. involvement, special forces. It seems have a presence in a crackdown on some of the upper level narco terror mafia lords. Seems like that's going on. Doesn't seem like it's anything we would find comparable to a war. There might be some civilian casualties, but not really the type of war that we're currently seeing unleashed in Iran. Now, this I can imagine.
Before you hop to Iran, sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
When you hear like Venezuela, Mexico, relatively clean, I think maybe I'm putting my own thoughts on this, but when you say relatively clean, and I point to like Venezuela, it's not like there's ongoing conflict, at least that we know of, happening there. It was like in, out, kind of like, there you go. We took the guy we wanted. There was some military men killed, and that's relatively clean.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Mexico is a drug kingpin. And so people write that up, like, he was a bad person. And so you walk in and there's been some aftershocks of that. Would that be fair to say? Like, I mean, I coach my son's hockey team. One of the dads trapped there. He goes, hey, it wasn't good. We're sitting on the resort, everybody leaves, they're kind of sitting there like, the military showed up, but they didn't come in. They just made sure we were safe. You're like, oh, like this isn't, like, okay. So like clean, careful. I'm like, if this happened in, I don't know, Canada, we would be saying clean. And I think everybody would be like, what the hell is going on? Right. So I don't know. Just my thoughts on it, Matt.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. I'm saying it in the context of the types of possibilities of many geopolitical experts and commentators who, in the days and weeks before the military intervention, had been warning of a full U.S. military invasion, which would find Trump's language of needing to militarily go in to take care of the drug problem in Mexico as a pretext for a full-blown real occupation. That was sort of and I'm not saying that won't happen at some point, maybe, but it doesn't look like that's on the agenda. That is certainly not what happened or what is happening, because it's currently in place still. So that's very different. That's not really the sort of, you correctly assessed my language of the word clean. Yeah. This is different. The U.S. with Israel have been building up a military capacity for quite some time in the Middle East. We know that there are internationally, if anybody Googles a map of international military bases, there's well over 900 U.S. military bases. There is 77 in Latin America alone. It's a huge capacity for power projection. There are military bases all around Iran. I think Iran's like the only country that does not host U.S. military bases. Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, they're everywhere. Iraq, Syria. And the policy in the Middle East, if you look at the Middle East, overall, it's a strategically important area, right? It's the place where all of the major civilizations, Asia, China, Russia, Africa, Europe, they all kind of meet in this zone. What Lord Halford Mackinder, the founder of modern geopolitics, called the soft underbelly of the world island. So whoever can control that zone will exert huge power over the world, for good or for bad. If you're somebody with a spirit and a heart for cooperation, for peace, then having influence in that area gives you a great power of negotiating intercivilizational diplomacy to create economic, opportunities that benefit various peoples from different parts of the world that could otherwise be going to war for other, divide to conquer reasons. If you're an imperialist, as the British Empire was, who took vast control over that region in the late 19th century, all the way up until the formation of the State of Israel, which came out of British Mandate Palestine. So the British had control of British Mandate Palestine, that's today's Israel, for really from World War I, the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, all the way up until 1947. If you're of the psychology of the British Empire and thinking about how to manage the world, then controlling that type of area will be useful and conducive for, again, divide to conquer strategies. In today's world, Iran has been a trophy. If you go back all the way to the architects of 9/11, here I'm talking about Paul Wolfowitz, Richard Pearl, a lot of the leading neoconservatives who took power in the year 2000 and already gamed out how this false flag called 9/11 was going to happen. They had already set up a think tank called the Project for a New American Century. And in 1996, this think tank basically composed a policy document called Clean Break, a strategy for securing the realm. And people can read it. It's still available online. My wife just published an article on this, actually. And he did this for Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu had only recently become prime minister of Israel over the dead body of another man, an actual good man by the name of Yitzhak Rabin. Yitzhak Rabin had just been murdered in 1995. He was the prime minister of Israel. Yitzhak Rabin had been formerly working very hard with Yasser Arafat from the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, to create what's known as the two-state solution. And that would be based upon the idea that was signed at Oslo in 1992. And it was about to happen. It was coming very close. Both sides agreed to basically recognize for the first time what the UN had said in 1947 was going to be legal when they created the State of Israel. They also co-created another state of Palestine, saying both would be states that would be recognized by the international community. However, that 1947 proclamation was only half recognized. Only the State of Israel was recognized. The other half was never recognized. So Palestine was never a legal entity. It never had a full seat at the UN until 1992, when Yitzhak Rabin said to Arafat, okay, let's just do this. Let's recognize you as a full state. We'll start. He requested that the IMF, the World Bank, direct the funds that they give to Israel and to Palestine towards economic development, building water, sanitation, roads, schools, hospitals that would put both people who had a lot of intergenerational baggage. There'd been a lot of abuses, a lot of pain from both sides. Eye for an eye stuff had pulled, carried its toll, and it was going to happen. The problem was, at that time, it was sabotaged by who? The World Bank. There was an emergency meeting at the World Bank. Basically, the response was given to Yitzhak Rabin saying, no, the money we give you, I think it was $50 million, will not be permitted to go towards infrastructure development. You have to use it for debt repayments and structural whatever. Nothing that deals with making life better for the people living in that part of the world. It's a desert, there's need for water, electricity. You need these things. You need jobs. So that didn't happen. And it began to get stifled. He was assassinated. There was actually, I think it was Ben Gvir, currently a very high-level player around Benjamin Netanyahu in the Likud party. He actually participated in a curse calling for the death of Yitzhak Rabin just a few weeks before he was murdered by a Zionist, not even a Muslim. He was murdered by a Zionist I guess, disposable fool who was induced to kill the prime minister. Because in his mind, you're destroying God's command. God promised this whole land from the Nile to the Euphrates to us, the chosen people. What are you doing, making an agreement with these heathens? These things. You're going against God. So that justified in the mind of many that Yitzhak should be killed, and he was killed. Benjamin Netanyahu came to power and immediately commissioned this strategy report, as I mentioned, Clean Break. A program for securing the realm. And just to be quick here, what it said was effectively, I'm just going to pull up I closed the tab anyway. So what this thing called for was the need to carry out regime change for all of a list of about 6 Arab nations around Israel, starting with Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, and Iran. So carried out, there's another one I'm forgetting. So it basically said the new policy has to be the U.S. and Israel have to work together to take down the leadership of these countries, and that has to be the new policy that will secure the realm for the security of Israel, at which point it can grow. The people who authored it involved Richard Pearl, Paul Wolfowitz, Donald Kagan, the brother-in-law of Victoria Nuland, who oversaw the growth of Nazis, neo-Nazis in Ukraine, and the regime change in Ukraine. So her brother-in-law was also the co-architect of this policy document. And again, Iran was always the top trophy, the top target, because Iran was providing a lot of the logistical support to Hezbollah in Lebanon, to Hamas in Gaza. But there's a problem here, because the excuse that was being sold to the people, regular people like you and me, regular citizens of Israel, was that Islamic terrorism is the cause of all of our insecurity. Now, it wasn't Islamic terrorism that killed your prime minister, Yitzhak Rabin. That was actually a Zionist. But that was the story. And it's true, Islamic terrorism was an issue. It got even worse after 9/11, which for those who are listening to the show, maybe this is something we could, if you want to flesh this out in more detail, we could. But I would say just quickly, anybody can discover pretty quickly that 9/11, the official story we were given about some guy in a cave who hates America's freedom and thus did 9/11, that's not true. That the official story is full of holes, and it looks much more like it was an inside job. Is that okay for your audience, or do we need to unpack it? That's okay.
Well, I tell you what, unpack it. I feel like somewhere along the line in the 1,000 episodes, somebody's brought up 9/11, but it's been a while. So walk us through it.
Okay. Well, here, let's circle back. So I'll say for the time being, there's movies called Loose Change that have unpacked the evidence for controlled demolitions. There's also there's a new movie called Codex 9/11 made by my friend Brad Zerbo, which is available on Rumble for free, demonstrating again the solid evidence for controlled demolitions that were placed in the buildings months before the actual September 11th moment was struck. Also, it dissects how two planes were attributed for taking down 3 buildings. There was a third building, number 7, that was demolished a little bit later on September 11th, a few hours after the second building went down. Again, was never hit by a building. It is scientifically impossible. Architects and Engineers from 9/11 is another website full of thousands of incredible architects and engineers who have dissected this, done the forensics. It is impossible. Pentagon as well has a number of holes that imply that.
You know what 9/11 reminds me of a little bit? Yeah. This is probably not a poor example, but when you're like, COVID was real, everything about it was real.
Yeah.
And then you see the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people who just absolutely poke holes in everything, and who have spent not their life, because obviously it's only 6 years ago it started. 7 maybe. Regardless, it's like it hasn't been their whole life, but for a chunk of time it was their whole life. They're just like, this doesn't make sense, that doesn't make sense, and all you got to do is just look at that same body of work now at 9/11. You go, oh boy, right? Because there are some very decorated people who've talked about 9/11, and well, this doesn't make sense, and that doesn't make sense, and how did that happen? And on and on and on it goes.
Yep. Yeah, it's if people haven't given themselves the gift of discovering that story, there's a lot to discover quickly that will demonstrate to you that COVID-19, the story surrounding COVID, as well as COVID-19 itself, and 9/11 have a lot in common, and a lot of the same agencies. In fact, if you look at it, there was something known as the Dark Winter exercise. So there were two military exercises that were gamed out before 9/11. There was one of them called Dark Winter. I think this was in the summer of 2001, which involved the Pentagon, a number of other agencies, kind of like an Event 201 type of thing, which did a tabletop exercise of what do we do under the situation of weaponized smallpox being sent to America to create a pandemic launched by Saddam Hussein as an excuse to come up with how do we retaliate to invade Iraq. That was 2001, I think June. Or no, that was the year 2000, actually. That was a full year and a half before September 11th. The idea was always to how do we invoke fear of death in masses of people in America who will then give their consent to the unthinkable, which is activities, military invasions, wars abroad that will ultimately lead in the murder of millions of innocent civilians, which currently the Americans won't do. But they will do it if they become more pliable. If they're more pliable,
I interviewed a guy, Matt. Like this is like very, very early. I don't know. I'm like in my episode 300 at this point. Anyways, I was doing a little bit of like 9/11. Can I get my brain around that, right? Because like up until COVID, I mean, I was the kid in high school where they rolled the TV in and we watched a plane strike, and I'm going, oh my goodness, and like you're trying to, it's a very formidable memory. I interviewed a guy, and I said, "You didn't believe 9/11 happened?" He goes, "No." And I go, "Why?" And I'm thinking Building 7, because by this time I've been told about Building 7, done a little bit of He goes, "The way it made me feel." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I was ready to kill anyone." And I'm like, "Huh." He goes, "Anytime they get you like that, you got to take a step back and go, something doesn't make sense." Because that feeling they're trying to invoke. And I'm like, yeah. And I mean, what's happening now all the time is they're trying to pull in this, like on the east coast of Canada, right? With the forest fires, you're not allowed to go in the woods. What did they all say? The people I interviewed from there said the fear tactics were just insane. They were just, everybody's going to die. You're going to die. We've got to stay out of the woods. We can't take a walk. It's like all the logic goes out the brain. Whoop. And I would add in Martin Armstrong has, like there's ties in my life where I don't want to believe that 9/11 was an inside job and things like that. It can't be that bad. So I always love Martin Armstrong for pointing out the Lusitania to me, because I went and researched that one, because I'm like, the Lusitania, World War I, like it's so far back, who cares? And you're like, oh, shit. Right? Like this has been a game plan. This ability to get the public support. How do you do that? Everything you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's happening over and over and over again. And if I go back to why we were originally going to do this podcast, it was to look at the rebellions and go, well, what can we learn from that? Because you think an independence movement, the first time it's ever been done. No, it's been done thousands of times, right? Just look at the borders of countries. I'm actually reading an old book on Caesar and his Gaelic wars. And what part of it is him putting down uprisings from different countries that are upset with Rome. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting, right? I actually find it very, anyway. So like, yeah, anyways, 9/11, where's my audience at?
I mean, it's an old recipe book, right? I mean, and again, what did Nero do to justify the crackdown on the early Christians? He
started fires.
He started fires, burnt Rome down. He was willing to kill a lot of Roman civilians in controlled fires that he set out his legionnaires to, or specially vetted, I guess, members of his legion to go and just start fires. and then say, look, the Christians are behind it. Let's go take them down. And stupid, soft-minded Roman civilians who were good people believed the propaganda, and they were, before you know it, cheering on, watching, Roman torches. That's basically human beings lit on fire. They were taking relish out of this feeling of revenge that we're finally seeing justice impose itself on those who burnt down our society. Or the Nazis did the same thing with the Reichstag, as it was discovered later on. It was like the Jews never actually burnt down. The Jews and communists never burnt down the German parliamentary buildings in 1933 in February. That was the German SS. That was the Nazis who then Goebbels told the German people, hey, the Jews and commies are burning down our government buildings. Let's now justify the enabling acts, these imperial,
It kind of reminds me of the Freedom Convoy, where they said it was all a bunch of Nazis and a bunch of this and a bunch of that. And the only difference, at least from where I sat, was everybody had a phone. And then we're just like, wait a second, that doesn't match. And you got like 10,000 citizen journalists going, nah, that isn't true. That building being burnt out, it's still standing right there. That Nazi flag, there's the guy. That doesn't make any sense, right? Like, I mean, on and on it went. Because they tried doing similar things to discredit that movement. I mean, like, in my own lifetime, there's a time where I have a hard time dealing with some of the things, once again, 9/11, right? It's just one of those memories, core memories. Mm-hmm. But in the last 6 years, you go, well, did they just start doing this, folks? Or have they been doing this for a long time? And the people who remember JFK and being alive for that, they're like, they've been sour for some time, because they're like, this has been going on and nobody will pay attention.
Yeah.
And there's more and more people paying attention, I guess, and then trying to just decipher. So that brings us back to Iran. You wake up Sunday, and you're like, holy. Now, in fairness on this side, Luongo told me this was coming. He's like, they're going to go in on Iran. They're going to bomb it. They're going to go in. They're going to kill a bunch of bad people. And this is an attack on the city of London, right? I mean, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say, like, although I was surprised, Luongo literally told me this was coming. Maybe not in the time frame. He couldn't tell me the exact time. Wasn't that? Just if I go back and go through our conversations, this isn't a surprise that way. Iran has been sitting there for how long as the powder keg, just waiting to go. Now the question is, does this turn into full-scale war everywhere, or does it die out and Iranians take back your government and life moves on?
Well, that is the big question. And I mean, right now, it's not looking good. And this gets at the original question of like how this is different from what we saw in the case of Mexico, or in the case of Venezuela, or maybe what we will see in the case of Greenland. I don't think it's going to be some sort of a crazy bloodbath. If that day should come, I don't think that's going to go crazy. This is different. Iran has an extremely powerful military that's been built in. I mean, they've been working on this for a long time. They've suffered a lot of foreign interventions, foreign abuses from the standpoint of the U.S. involvement with the British in overthrowing Mossadegh, who nationalized Anglo-Persian Petroleum back in the 1950s, 53. He was overthrown when he was basically not behaving the way he was supposed to as a good localized puppet. They placed in the Shah. They built up the Savak. The Savak was a major abusive secret police apparatus that managed the Iranian society from the 1950s all the way up until the 1979 coup or overthrow. Again, that was a Nazi-managed apparatus. The Nazis that were not punished after World War II were sent down to train the Savak, to carry out torture, murder programs. They were a big part of the CIA management, as well as they interfaced with Mossad. A lot of them didn't disappear. A lot of them, after the regime change in 1979, 1980, a lot of them did go. A lot of the members of the Savak did leave, were given sanctuary in Britain, in the U.S., but a lot of them stayed behind and just said, "Okay, now we're going to go with the Ayatollah. We're going to be the new bureaucracy." Never really fully changed. So you got that element of it, but there was something where Iran, especially by the 1990s, had new management. They had a new type of policy outlook, which began to promote the idea of cooperation with other nations. What's his name? The Ayatollah, whose name is all of a sudden escaping me, in 1997, went down, met with Pope John Paul II, commissioned a series of conferences around the idea of development for peace as the foundation for any type of world going forward. This is before 9/11. This is also around the idea of a dialogue of civilizations has to be the foundation of getting over this British imperial Hobbesian way of thinking about a clash of civilizations as the way we organize some eternal war of different systems forever. That we have to get over that caveman type of ethos and get into something more civilized. So he started playing all of a sudden a very, very good role. And that was at the same time that Zbigniew Brzezinski, the architect of the growth of actual Islamic terrorism, which is the thing I wanted to say before I get into the current situation, is that the real fear of Islamic terrorism that was designed to unite all of the Americans, all of the Israelis around some sort of a common policy out of fear, terror, was itself the creation not of Iran, though we've been told this. We've been told this as part of a propaganda campaign to demonize Iran for a long time. But if you look at where the Salafists, the Wahhabist movements, the ISIS, the Al-Qaedas, the ISILs, where did this all come from? It came out of a massive program by Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was then he's the national security advisor for Jimmy Carter. He's the guy who oversaw Operation Cyclone. That was a program to take $500 million for starters of U.S. taxpayer money in 1979 to fund radicalizing madrasas, to weaponize basically radical Islam, and then use that as a way to suck the Soviets at the time, that was the major nemesis of the United States, suck them into their own Vietnam and Afghanistan. That was successful, and Zbigniew in 1997 said that was the greatest success of his life. So they created this ideology, this radicalizing ideology that of this particular strain of Islam around Wahhabism, Salafism, which were basically philosophies that said that had a very strict interpretation of the Quran, and that said anybody who doesn't abide by the very specific, peculiar interpretation that says like no dancing allowed, that's not kosher, that's not permitted by Allah. No Western science. There's no women have to be completely bounded up, because they awaken the sinful factory inside of all men. If you see an ounce of or a little inch of flesh, that's the devil's. The devil will find a home to take control of you, so you have to cover your women head to toe and all of this stuff. Anybody who doesn't, including other Muslims, if they don't abide by the exact same interpretation, they are infidel. And if you're infidel, then it's not a sin to kill you. So that type of ideology was not common amongst Muslims, but that's what Zbigniew and these figures around Henry Kissinger wanted to grow and expand to take over more and more of the Islamic mindset, especially of broken young men who had suffered in poverty and injustice in the Middle East for a long time. They were ripe. It was a fertile breeding ground for radicalization, which is what they did. And it worked to suck in the Soviets in a wasting war, but it also created this monstrosity. However, it continued to enjoy support, and this involved also the Muslim Brotherhood, which was useful in killing many Muslim leaders who were trying to do things like Mossadegh over the 1960s, 70s. That was sort of the deep state of the Arab world, is the Muslim Brotherhood. And that's what grew out of Hamas. So Hamas grew out of, they were a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood when they were created in 1987 inside of Palestine to be the enemy of Yasser Arafat. I had mentioned earlier that Yasser Arafat from the PLO was working with Yitzhak Rabin to create this two-state solution. The thing that was designed to destroy Yasser Arafat's PLO was Hamas. So you had this whole thing incubating, receiving continued support, and this has now been proven as well that the CIA continued to provide the support even after the Soviet Union disintegrated to these radicalized groups. We saw even Obama give speeches in 2011 saying that they were training ISIS in Syria and Libya, that was what they were doing, providing weapons, support, logistics, training to things we were told were freedom fighters. But if you looked at what they were doing, these were the same Al-Qaeda groups that we were told we had to go in and bomb Iraq and bomb Iran to stop. Now, Iran has never been behind any of these things. There's never been a single proven court case anywhere in the world. People can check this out. That has actually demonstrated that Iran has been behind any of these Al-Qaeda groups that we are told are the cause of all of our problems. That's not the case. So Iran they have been a trophy, a high-level target for regime change since the days, I would say, especially of that clean break doctrine. Today, Iran has been, especially since the discussions for a dialogue of civilizations in the late 90s, when Zbigniew said that the only threat to the New World Order might be the possible alliance of Russia, China, and Iran. He said that in 1998, that the only possible threat to his New World Order, the idea of getting rid of nation states, consolidating a new technocratic governance structure over the entire world, was the possible alliance of Russia, China, and Iran. But he said that is the only fear we have. People didn't take him too seriously. Joe Biden gave a speech. He came back from Russia and he said, the Russians told me, this is 1990, the same, like just a month later, Joe Biden gave a press conference that people can watch on YouTube. And he said, the Russians told me that if we don't start respecting them more, this is during the days of perestroika, of privatize everything, right? That was overseen by the British, by Washington, where we basically gutted the Russian economy. We created a new oligarchical class devoted and loyal to London and Wall Street during that time. And he said, I was threatened by the top general saying if we don't start respecting Russia more, that they will move away from an alliance with America that they're promising and towards China and Iran. And I told them, yeah, good luck with that. And he chuckles and laughs in a press conference that people can watch on YouTube. Now, that the Russians were serious. The Chinese and the Iranians were serious. But people, I think, were a little bit too drunk on the idea of the end of history in the West, that these technocrats didn't realize what was going on at the time. But Iran, if you look at it today, so they are, over the last, I would say 4 or 5 months, we've seen 20 year and 25 year strategic comprehensive partnerships signed between Iran and Russia and Iran and China. The biggest comprehensive strategic partnerships in history have been signed by these countries, including in January of this year, a mutual defense pact. That concerns me a lot because it's kind of like NATO has their mutual security protocols of Article 5. If one member gets into a conflict, everyone is obliged to enter in defense of that member. I think there's 31 members now in NATO. So that's an easy way to spark a war of each against all. Even if it's a false flag can be initiated in one of the member countries, and all of a sudden, everyone's sucked in, kind of like what happened in World War I, but now with nuclear weapons. So something similar was signed.
And if I might add, like, okay, the thing with NATO is everybody kind of pokes fun at it, is like nobody has a fighting force and nobody wants to go to war, right? Like right now they're trying to jockey on how to get their public up to speed and create, military training, and it's going to take some time and everything else. The thing about Iran, China, and Russia, well, Russia's been at war now for how many years? And, their reserves and fighting force is quite capable sitting there right now. I don't know logistically and everything like that, but we all know they've been at war, active war, for years now. So, that is a major difference from what NATO has, where NATO, like Canada's got what? Nothing. A very small. I mean, we're talking about putting 300,000 public servants in the reserves type thing, right? And that goes for a lot of the NATO countries. Carry on.
Yeah.
Not to mention the U.S. is trying to actively get out of the NATO, right? Like, I mean, anyways, carry on.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So we know that this is a big deal. I think Iran is like the 4th biggest military power in the world. They are the key node. If you look at the maps here, maybe even if I know many people listen to your show, but some of them are watching the show. So for those who are watching, I'm going to just showcase here 2 maps. One of them, I don't know if you could show my screen here.
Yep.
Okay. So what they're looking at right now is the International North-South Transportation Corridor that is a multimodal 9,000 kilometer route of rail, of ports on the Caspian Sea that stretches actually much further up to the north of Russia, all the way down through Central Asia, through Azerbaijan, Armenia, through Kazakhstan, through you got a variety of countries there that tie into Iran being the keynote. Tehran,
Turkey.
There is,
Yeah, right. Turkey
would be it passes through that. Well, what you're looking at there is in the east-west rail corridor, that is part of the Belt and Road Initiative. So the Chinese had unleashed or announced in 2013 something called the Belt and Road Initiative to try to integrate the Eurasian space principally, but also create interconnectivity between different cultures from stretching from China to Europe, but also with branches down through the Middle East into Russia. That's one of the three major arteries of the East-West Belt and Road Initiative that passes through Iran into Turkey. But then also in the north, in the yellow, that's the International North-South Transportation Corridor that was first announced in 2002 by Iran, Russia, and India. And due to destabilizations that were the consequence of 9/11, it was sabotaged, and only in 2020 was it really picked up again and was made the driving force of you could unshare that screen. It was made sort of again the driving force of foreign policy of those countries. So Iran plays a key role in two different major complexes of economic prosperity that are currently underway, which we could be working with. Like, honestly, there have been many offers made by the Russians, by the Chinese, by the Iranians to the West saying, hey, let's all cooperate together on making money together, on building infrastructure, building new businesses on these types of projects. So far, those who would have liked to have done that are nowhere near political power. And instead, what we have is a language of belligerence that chooses to see this whole thing as a strategic threat to hegemony of London, of Washington. And so that has been a target for destabilization. BRI projects have been targeted in Africa by terrorists, whether it's Malian terrorists of Boko Haram or the Tigray Liberation People's Front, which also has received a massive amount of support from the CIA from the West as part of an Ethiopian destabilization, also spreads into Somalia, which has been a major hub run by U.S. military intelligence for a very long time. The amount of targeting of engineers working on these projects, the fatality rates of engineers building rail, building dams, building other things in Ethiopia or in any of the African countries working with China is very high. It's a risky thing, even more risky than going in the military if you're going to be an engineer building things like this in areas that are influenced by CIA-funded terrorists, because they target infrastructure. They don't target their so-called enemies in the anyway. So Iran has been a bedrock of this kind of dialogue of civilization. So the fact that they suffered finally a 12-day war, there was a big decapitation. A lot of people who are pro-Iranian, they champion Iran's performance in putting down this U.S.-Israeli attack that went on last year. I think it was in May or something, for like 12 days. But the fact is, Iran suffered some pretty big hits. Like 30 of their top generals were killed in that 12-day war. Like a lot of years of lived experience were eliminated with the murder of these people. Just before that, a year earlier, Raisi, as well as the defense minister, were both killed in a helicopter accident that took place just on the border of Azerbaijan. That seems to have had foul play behind it. Now, more recently, you have not just the Ayatollah Khamenei that was killed in the current strikes, but you have the chief of staff of the Iranian forces. You got the former president Ahmadinejad was killed, but you also have the national security advisor, the head of the IRGC military. You had the chairman of the Organization of Defensive Innovation who was killed. You got a lot of civilians as well. You know, people could say, oh, but those are military targets. Well, number one, those military targets, as they pointed out, never seem to have been behind the actual problem of terrorism. That seems to be more on us, that these international terrorist groups have been
funded and come together.
Yeah. But number two, you got a lot of civilians who have also been killed. The choice to strike this girls' school, what's called the Minab Girls' School, which appears to have over 100 children dead because of this Israel-U.S. Strike, that's bad optics and it's bad morality. I mean, people could see those photographs of dead children. It's pretty gut-wrenching. So how are you gonna? We saw nothing like this in Venezuela. We saw nothing like this in Mexico. The whole of Iran, if you could look on Iranian state media, you could look at it. Don't just look at CNN or Fox News. Look at the other side's media as well, and you'll find millions and millions of people all across Iran who are going through their own kind of Pearl Harbor moment right now, kind of like what Americans went through psychologically in December 1941. That's kind of what's happening now as we speak, where they feel like total injustice has befallen them. They have martyrs. Ayatollah Khamenei was 86 years old, but he is elevated now to a martyr status. And there's the demand for some form of revenge. We've seen retaliatory strikes on principally, not always, but principally U.S. military bases. The Iranian Foreign Ministry has asked all of the Gulf client states, which host U.S. military bases, to kick out the U.S. military because they're saying, unfortunately, your whole nation, by acquiescing to host U.S. military bases, is now a target in the context of war unless you get rid of the U.S. military bases. If that happens, I'll be happy. Maybe that might encourage Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Iraq to say, go away. You're not, because there's hundreds, there's like 240 U.S. military bases in just the Middle East. It's a big power. So we've seen retaliatory strikes. We've seen also some like the airport in Dubai get struck. I don't think there were necessarily any fatalities, but still, it's showing you that this is escalating fast. Tel Aviv has been struck. Many sites in Israel have been struck. Again, the civilian fatalities aren't too big, but they say upwards of 560 U.S. troops is the estimate I last saw on Al Mayadan news were killed in Bahrain at the U.S. military base that got struck by Iran there. So I don't know where this is going to go. There's not a lot of space for dialogue as more bombs keep on killing people on the other side, especially civilians, especially the leaders of that society. So it's putting at risk both the Belt and Road Initiative is sincerely being put at risk. The International North-South Transportation Corridor is being put at risk. And I'd say also the danger here is that India seems to be getting seduced into a very dangerous game, because 2 days before this began, from February 27th to 29th, the guest of honor in Israel was none other than Narendra Modi. And Modi has been working to create some weird Israel nationalist, Hindu nationalist union, and he's the only Indian prime minister that's ever visited Israel. His speech gave full support to basically Zionism over the cause of anybody in Palestine. He gave a full a speech actually saying as well his belief that the pathway going forward is to build what's called the India-European Middle East Economic Corridor, which is a economic corridor that completely bypasses Iran. It avoids, it's basically, it was begun by Joe Biden in 2023, or at least whoever handled the puppet Joe Biden. It was launched there as the idea of saying, okay, we can create a different BRI that is not run by China. We could sabotage China's BRI and instead, or the Belt and Road Initiative, and instead have something that is tied to U.S.-run assets, India being the big one, which has special military contracts with the United States, and India as well was basically told, okay, we will build something that will go straight from India to Saudi Arabia to Turkey into Europe as a new economic corridor. How they're going to pay for it is beyond me. because they don't seem to have any economic competence, but that's what they want. That's what Modi proclaimed is his initiative or his ambition. Benjamin Netanyahu said the same thing. Modi as well has been part of, or was getting seduced into building a NATO of the Pacific, encircling China with Japan, Australia, the USA, and India. That's it. That's the Quad for a new NATO in the Pacific. And now there's an idea of a NATO of the Middle East with Israel and India as well. So it seems like India is moving away from the BRICS. It's moving away from the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and moving more into this Israeli sphere of influence with the United States instead. So that's all things that imply to my mind that a much, much bigger move is happening currently, which could see a disaster on a number of levels. And unfortunately, you got a lot of the Israelis who are really, really happy around the idea that this could be finally the fulfillment of the promise that was made to Moses thousands of years ago, that you will achieve your land finally at the end of an age, and from the river to the Euphrates, from the Nile to the Euphrates, will be yours finally now, here, at this time. And that means most of the Arabs living in these regions of Jordan, of a big chunk of Saudi Arabia, of most of Syria, most of Iraq, have to disappear in order for this culmination of thousands of years of prophecy to be fulfilled. That's a scary thing, that's an ideology in play. And people can look at the maps of, I don't know, have you seen the Greater Israel maps?
I did, but we could pull it up.
Yeah? Okay. Here, I'll just do a little screen share here of, I'll stop screen. Oh, I could just do that, eh? Okay, let's pull it up. Greater Israel. Oh, wait, here, I got it right here. All right, so do you see that?
Click on one of them, or just make it a touch bigger, man.
Oh, I see. No, it's still the same. I can only share one tab at a time, so let me just do this again. All right, so this here is Greater Israel. That is the map put forth by Theodor Herzl, the head of the World Zionist Congress, over 120 years ago. This is what was put forth by Jabotinsky as the idea of what this land of the Jews, this ethno-nationalist land, would ultimately grow into as its maximum fulfillment. Here's another map, which is useful because it's paralleled with an existent official patch of the IDF that grew out of these Haganah and Irgun terrorist outfits in the 1930s. That basically became the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, and on one of their patches features a map of the Greater Israel territory, which was also part of the idea of clean break. I don't know if you were able to see that. Yeah, you were.
Yes, I was. Yep.
And that is something which I mentioned Jabotinsky, who was a leading fascist, a leader of the Irgun, of the Haganah, the night brigades, was a big promoter of this in the 30s and the 40s. Well, his personal assistant was Benjamin Netanyahu's father, who was the personal assistant to Jabotinsky. It's a big part of the Chabad Lubavitch movement around Rabbi Schneerson, who was somebody who had told, there's video footage. People can Google this, go to YouTube and listen to Rabbi Schneerson and Benjamin Netanyahu in 1991, where Schneerson is basically telling Netanyahu, you're not accelerating the advent of the Messiah fast enough. You have to work faster. And Netanyahu is like a chastised schoolboy saying, I will work harder. I'm sorry. And people can, again, watch this. This is, so there's something that's not purely geopolitical in nature. There's something more to it that's a bit more of more of an eschatological fervor, fanaticism behind it, which I think is dangerous. But also Benjamin Netanyahu is not even in Israel. He immediately left as soon as the bombs started dropping onto Iran. He immediately got the hell out of there. His kids went to Florida. His wife went to Florida. He went to Berlin. So, it's showing you that these guys are more than willing to do things that result in disposing of their own Jewish people in order to sacrifice for something bigger as an outcome. that's a very dangerous way of thinking. If you're a leader that's about to start a war and you're not willing to actually stand by, stand by your people at a time of that war, it's shady. The last thing I'll just say on this point too is that Iran was agreeing as the bombs began on, I think it was Saturday. Iran was in the middle. Larijani was the spokesperson representing the Iranian side in Oman with the Americans, with Witkoff, where they were in negotiations for several days. It had begun on Thursday for some form of a peace process on the Iran nuclear deal. And Iran had fully agreed to have no stockpiling, to have full IAEA, that's the International Atomic Energy Agency, oversight of their civilian nuclear sector, to have irreversible nuclear downgrades so that they would not have any type of enrichment beyond a certain threshold. And they even had agreed a little bit earlier, and this is the Oman foreign minister, had come out just yesterday saying that the Iranian side had agreed to everything that was being asked of them by the Americans and by the Israelis. They agreed to everything. And despite that, bombs began to be dropped on the girls' school and other places. The Russians had formally, right before the 12-day war, had made their offer to stop the 12-day war in May of 2025 by saying, hey, we will help Iran build 8 new civilian reactors, and we will process the spent fuel for Iran and then send back to Iran usable civilian uranium.
What is Russia saying right now?
Russia has they've condemned the attacks. They're siding with Iran currently. That's the Lavrov's position. Zakharova has even said, she gave a press conference yesterday saying that the Oman peace talks were the exact same trap that was set up with the Minsk peace talks in 2015-16, when the Americans were acting like they cared about peace in Ukraine and brought the Russians in to have these peace negotiations. But as was discovered by Hollande, the former head of France, as well as Angela Merkel, who participated in those peace talks, they basically both said that the peace talks were never genuine and that they were just trying to buy time to militarize the Ukrainians in order to launch an assault on Russian territories in Ukraine in the east, the Donetsk region. So they were never honest peace talks, and it seems like, again, time was just simply being bidden, according to Maria Zakharova, the spokesperson for the Kremlin, in the case of Oman as well.
Now, once again, I'm thinking of the book I'm reading on Julius Caesar, and peace talks. He talks about how they can be used for this exact thing, and so he was looking at historical things that had happened to Romans from, at the time. I think the book is talking about the Swiss army and how they decimated the Romans by going into peace talks and kind of dragging things out and then organizing themselves, buying time. And so you go, there's nothing new under the sun. We fast forward, and it's like, we shouldn't be shocked, right? Like, I mean, this has been used and used again over and over again. It's interesting. I don't know. I sit here and I'm like, I woke up, saw it, I'm like, holy crap. Listen to President Trump's address about it, talking about, man, did he use the word annihilating their navy? Something along that lines. I was like, oof. That isn't talking about, taking out one ship. It's like we're gonna get rid of it all. And I don't know. I sit here and I'm only time's gonna tell. I could sit and wait 2 weeks before we talk about it. Maybe it's all over. Maybe it's all done and we just move on with life. I don't know. I don't know, Pat. I sit here.
Yeah, I don't. Anybody who says that they know exactly what's going to happen is talking out of their ass at this point. And unfortunately, that's a habit I think that a lot of commentators have gotten into, is this absolutist kind of language of feeling like they have to act like they know exactly what's happening and what's going to happen. And it's not healthy. We have to have the humility to say, okay, look, we know some things. use that to make strong hypotheses about things, but we have to admit what we don't know as well. We're not part of these back channels. What were certain negotiations made between the Russians and the Chinese and the Americans regarding Venezuela? Maybe possible, entirely possible. Was there already some like new Yalta discussion to divide up, to carve up the world made behind the scenes? Maybe there was. I don't know that. I'm not part of those conversations. Is there an agreement on what the new system is going to look? Okay. Is there a guarantee that the current system we've been living in, that was called globalization, is going to end soon? And will that ending involve messiness? I would say that's almost guaranteed. I don't know what the trigger is going to be, but I'd say it's pretty much guaranteed that this is a system founded on unpayable rates of exponentially increasing debts and fictitious capital, and you can only blow a hubba bubba bubble gum so far before the physical reality imposes itself and it blows, right? It won't go on forever. So it seems like we've passed, or we're in that threshold of maximum expansion of the bubbles. Is it decided? So if that in my mind, though we don't know the date, we don't know the specific trigger, because there's many triggers that could result in the demolition of this economy. But we don't know what it will be. We don't know what the new system is going to be, and is everybody in agreement of what that new system will be, what the new set of values is going to be premised around? No, I see very divergent thoughts about what that'll be, who it will serve. Will it be sovereign nation states? Will it be a system based upon natural law? Or will it be something that is designed to create a new type of currency that's tied to our behavior? Whether that then enslaves us. Is it going to be something more like that? I don't know. It seems to be that there's a fight over what that's going to be. So when I look at, the case of, right now, the world situation, it seems like the dangerous thing right now is that occultists, because there is a factor of occultism. I don't like going into this part of the conversation because it's weird, but there are, I mean, even this came up, people have noticed in the Epstein files, certain allusions to occultism, to Satanism, things like that. That's baked. It's there. It's been incubating behind the scenes, where certain decisions to reduce the world population are not just done pragmatically because it's easier to control 1 billion or 500 million over 8 billion or 9 billion or 20 billion people. It's not just a pragmatic control thing, but it's also that there is an idea of ritual sacrifice, which animates the thinking of Satanists, who unfortunately seem to enjoy a lot of power behind the scenes, and have since the days of the Roman Empire. If you look at the occult,
the occult has been here since very early times.
Oh yes, and it never went away. It got rebranded a few times. The outward expression of these mystery cults and secret societies have changed their complexion as the age has progressed, but it's the same formula. It's the same cosmology, the same idea of a satanic creator that made the elites in the image of that satanic creator, or that evil god that demands we do evil to do good. That has this weird convergence of the sacred and the profane that are encouraged, in practitioners of, whether it's the cults of Isis or Sibel Atis or Mithra, or there's a number of these mystery schools that still exists. That was what the American founding fathers fought against. When you look at the Hellfire Club, that was the dominant secret society in England, in the British aristocracy, which Ben Franklin infiltrated, and which was governing. That's the heart and soul, the evil, dark heart and soul of the British Empire, was the Hellfire Club of the 18th century. That's what the American founding fathers were fighting to break away from. So this thing, again, even though the Hellfire Club disappeared in 1781 or whatever, 1782, it just changed names and became the Phoenix Society. That's the name. It's official. The nephew of Francis Dashwood, who was the head, exchequer of the British Mint of the British Empire. He was the head of the Hellfire Club. His nephew becomes the founder of the Phoenix Society at Oxford. But this thing then seeds into the new United States. They start seeding into creating the Greek letter societies in America. The Phi Beta Alphas and all those things. They insert themselves to create things like the Skull and Bones. As far as like initiatory agencies to brainwash young elites to become servants of this unnatural entity. They got these things in Upper Canada College. This is what the Family Compact was overseeing as well. Hey, look at that. We just got into the Family Compact. This is what people like, William Lyon Mackenzie, not King, sorry, William Lyon Mackenzie and Louis Joseph Papineau were trying to break away from, as far as this evil agency of brainwashing of elites to become the managers of the next generation in Upper and Lower in King's College in Ontario. That was the Family Compact. These upper level families that didn't want to be a part of the American Revolution, but they wanted to stay loyal to this ancient system of oligarchical power when they were basically given sanctuary by the British Empire, saying, okay, well, you're not welcome in your rebellious 13 colonies. We'll give you some space to grow and to rebuild yourselves up here in British territories in Upper and Lower Canada. That became the Family Compact. And they always wanted to undo the mistake of 1776. That was always their devotion, was to create some sort of an anti-American entity up here in the northern part of North America that would be this anti-American doppelganger loyal to the crown as our modus operandi. And you had a couple of efforts to break away from that by Louis Joseph Papineau and Mackenzie King, who unfortunately didn't fully, this is 1837, 1838, they didn't fully understand what they were dealing with. And they probably allowed way too many untrustworthy agents to gain positions of influence, like Robert Nelson, who was trusted way too much by both Papineau and Mackenzie King. And basically, they tried to pluck the fruit before it was ripe. They didn't have the patience of a Benjamin Franklin. They didn't have the wisdom of Ben Franklin, who knew you had to create a culture of greater wisdom and fortitude before you could do something like strike on revolution. They just wanted to just go for the action first, don't think too much, act now. But that resulted in them leaving a ton of blind spots where John Russell, the grandfather of Lord Bertrand Russell, one of the key figures behind the Fabian Society, this agency that was created to do what Fabius Maximus, the Roman general that you just pointed out or you alluded to, innovated of defeat by attrition, right? Create peace conferences in the Roman Empire days against Hannibal. And when they were fighting Carthage under Rome, Maximus said, well, why are we doing all of this fighting? We're wasting our forces. Let's just draw them out. Let's have them waste away. We'll keep on we'll just always promise peace talks until they finally are weakened. They've drawn down their resources, and then we'll slowly begin to strike them. And that worked. And that's where the Fabian Society that created the London School of Economics, that took over that created the Labour Party. That's what Bertrand Russell basically was the leader of. That's the technique that they got from. That's Tony Blair is a leading Fabian Society member. He's also one of the earliest co-founders of the Board of Peace, the Gaza Board of Peace.
Would you call him just on the word choice? Is he a co-founder?
Lord Bertrand Russell?
No. Tony Blair.
Yeah, he was one of the first 7 originally announced leaders of the Board of Peace's executive committee. So, look, maybe he was just invited in to be allowed to have a seat at the table. Maybe he wasn't actually behind the creation of the
I like when Matt goes, listen, let's go with the positive here. Maybe I'm just but he was and you're like, oh man. It's just like you're just watching everything go on. Sorry, folks, I've derailed where he was going. I heard that. I'm like, what? He's on. Like, I'm like, what do I even search to find that? What do I find? What do I type in? Tony Blair?
Yeah, Tony Blair, Gaza Board of Peace. You could look. No, let's look to see when he was brought into the executive committee. I'm not too sure what the date was, but I'm pretty sure he was announced as soon as the Board of Peace was announced, with a few early members. He was already part of that short list. So I don't know the exact specificities of what day that was or what role he played. What does it say for you?
I'm just trying to find it.
Here, I'll do the same thing too. We'll do a little.
I'm like, what? Like what?
Peace, Gaza Executive Committee. Here, if people don't know what we're doing right now, we're just Googling.
Yeah. Well, Tony Blair. Okay, so Board of Peace Executive Board. Members of this Board of Peace were announced on January 17th, 2026. They are, and then you've got a whole bunch of people: Marco Rubio, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and then Tony Blair is in there.
Oh, and it says here on the Financial Times that the Tony Blair Institute has trained all of the technocrats who will be serving on the Board of Peace. So the actual staff of the Board of Peace.
So I'm going to go back to this. Tony Blair is a part of what organization?
Fabian Society. Which
is the wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yes.
Correct?
That was set up by a bunch of eugenicists around... George Bernard Shaw, Beatrice and Sidney Webb, H.G. Wells was a leading member. Halford Mackinder, the founder of Geopolitics, was a leading member of this grouping that was set up in 1884. It created the London School of Economics. It was sort of the left-wing version of the Round Table. So the Round Table was set up by Lord Milner and Rhodes. That's what created the Rhodes Trust. Things like the Council on Foreign Relations in America is the American branch of this British Roundtable movement. That was sort of catering to the right, the flavor of right, and the Fabians were the flavor of the more socialist leaning left.
Maybe I'm way too simple. Maybe I'm just way too simple of a guy. Okay, you start a board, right? You wanna I don't know, do something in your town, your neighborhood, whatever it is. I'd be like, what group are you part of? Fabian Society? Is that the one with the wolf in sheep's clothing? Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we can do some game strategy here and try and strategize why Tony Blair would be there. But in my conversations with Matt over the years, the old Fabian Society has perked a few of us up. I'm going, what? Literally, look at their logo. I'm like, that ain't good. That I don't think I want that on the old board for Lloydminster Prosperity or whatever the heck that board is called. You know, it's like that's probably not the smart choice.
No, it's a pretty sick joke. Like, they have this weird sardonic sense of humor about themselves, where I think they just kind of presume that most people won't see what they're putting right in our faces. Like this wolf in sheep's clothing thing that Bernard Shaw, who's a disgusting person who celebrated the idea of having a society run by death chambers where you have to justify your life's existence every 5 years to a committee. That's actually, you can go on YouTube and listen to Bernard Shaw in 1938 talking about his dream of a world managed by these death councils that every citizen would have to go and justify why you exist. And if you cannot justify you exist, off to the killing chamber. Ha ha ha. Like, this guy's sick, but he's like a celebrated playwright. This guy's like the hero of Robertson Davies, the Canadian author, literary figure, friend of Margaret Atwood, who's again kind of like a witch occultist herself, it seems. So is Robertson Davies.
I'm just gonna pull it up for everybody because I feel like everybody's seen this, but just in case you haven't, there it is.
Yeah,
there's the.
That's still in the London School of Economics. They have this as part of like an altar in the school even today, and it doesn't mean everybody who goes to the London School of Economics. But it's there for those in the know, and yeah, it's a weird bit of publicity, eh? It's strange.
Yeah, I mean, it's just reality is stranger than fiction, folks. I even think the Board of Peace, the name of it, I'm like, okay. And then you're bombing everyone. And you're like, all the things. I'm like, I don't know. Right? Like, I sit here. I'm just trying to get people in, give their perspectives, different thoughts. And I don't know. This is getting stranger by the day.
You want to hear, well, something really weird here is, let's do a little screen share. The share screen, entire screen, no window. Here it is. I got it. I don't got it. Never mind. It's not easy to share the screen for some reason. I was going to share a PowerPoint. I got it. Here it is. Okay. So, yeah, that's the greater. You want to share my screen?
Yeah, I did. Yep.
Okay.
What's up?
So yeah, we've already seen this image of the greater Israel objective, but if you compare it down to when the Jews were in Babylon in captivity under Nebuchadnezzar, it's not that different. Like, that was the Neo-Babylonian Empire of those 70 years when the Jews were in captivity. It's kind of like not different enough for me for like the ambition of what those have been led to believe is greater Israel. It's a strange thing. And we know that a big chunk of like what became the Kabbalah, a big part of Jewish mysticism, of gematria, things like that were generated when even some of the writings themselves of the Jewish Old Testament were modified when the Jews were in captivity in Babylon. So there's this weird connection there I don't fully understand. But we've got this guy who is this guy's Rabbi Abraham Isaac Cook, and he was the British Mandate chief rabbi of Palestine. And he had this weird thing right before he dies. He writes this book called the Orot, which is celebrated by Benjamin Netanyahu's father, all of the Likudnik rabbis today who are behind the Greater Israel Objective, the plans that have been in play now for a long time. He said this thing saying the truth concerning the land is revealed in Kabbalah. Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, militates for life in the land of Israel. Rationalistic approaches to Judaism place no special value on the land of Israel. And then he gets, so far, nothing really terrible, right? But then he says, in wars, nationalistic characters crystallize. Israel, as the universal reflection of mankind, benefits from wars. So he's got a religious idea that wars crystallize our national character, and Israel will thus always benefit. The heels of Messiah follow upon world conflagration, basically burning of the world. At the hour of the downfall of Western civilization, Israel is called upon to fulfill its divine mission by providing the spiritual basis for a new world order. So you got this creepy guy who's like one of the most influential rabbis. His son becomes like a leading figure in the there's a network of yeshivas. I think it's the Maraf. I forgot the name, but there's these specific yeshivas that follow his teachings, and all of their student, the people who were processed in these specific Abraham Isaac Cook yeshivas, which is tied to British Freemasonry on a number of levels, which also gets weird. They become the leadership of Israel after the 7-Day War or the 6-Day War. And they, not all of the time, like Yitzhak Rabin fought against them. Yossi Beilin, who was the foreign minister under Yitzhak Rabin, was fighting against them. But the amount of power that they started exerting over the governance and ideology of Israel was really outstanding after the 1970s, and it got really big over the dead body of Yitzhak Rabin when Netanyahu came to power. So that's a concerning thing, that these guys are thinking in terms of building up this society that involves a necessity of war, a necessity of a world conflagration that they believe has to happen in order for the Messiah to come for the first time, which is where also you get this weird collaboration with the more radical Christian Zionists around George Bush and Dick Cheney, because they also believed that there was a necessity for some end times, Gog Magog conflict, some clash of civilizations that would have a world in order to bring in the Messiah for the second time. So they both kind of didn't like each other. The Jewish Zionists and the Christian Zionists, they didn't really like each other, but at the same time they worked very well together, thinking, where the George Bush fanatics were like, okay, the Jews who work with us, they're going to become Christian at the end times. The Jews are like, well, we can use the Christians to get what we want. Everybody wants the same thing, though. World conflagration for some, but it's like at that point, it's not really God doing it, is it? Like you're kind of doing the Pygmalion effect. If you're the one going out of your way to unnaturally do 9/11s to build up enemy soldiers around Al-Qaeda, you're putting in all of this money to create these problems in order to solve the problems. Well, that's not really prophecy being fulfilled anymore, is it? That's kind of you going ahead and starting fires in order to, say that, I don't know, God proclaimed that water would put out a fire, so we have to burn the village. And then, but it's like you're cheating. That's not God anymore. That's you doing something unnatural, killing innocent civilians and lying. So
it's that thing right there that you're talking about has really mind warped me, because I've thought a lot about that. When he comes back, if we artificially do all the things, does it matter if the things still happen? Right? Essentially what you're talking about. But when Jesus comes, right? When Jesus comes and walked the earth and then gets crucified, he knew he had to do that to fulfill the prophecies, essentially. I hope I'm making sense.
Mm.
So even though the same evil that walked the earth, the same stupidity, the same power-hungry men who could not see what was right in front of them, they went and did it to fulfill what was to come. It's like, I don't know. I get my brain wrapped 6 different ways on this one, Matt, where I'm like, I mean, they're all misled, because if they're doing evil to get good, when the big guy comes back, he's going to measure your heart, not, like, well, you say you're Christian, but you killed 10 million people. Boy.
Yeah.
I feel like I know what's coming there. Maybe I don't. I don't know. That's like, you get talking to that, my brain's like,
no, dude,
whew.
Me too. Like, look, I think as well, like for me as a historian looking at like ideas shaping things throughout history, bad ideas and good ideas, like I've noticed that the best Christians who do the good, like who have defeated the oligarchy most successfully at different moments of time, were people who focused on love and doing good no matter what, and didn't make the focus of their identity fulfilling prophecy. Like their idea was, okay, what God wills, God wills. When it happens, it happens. When the Messiah comes back, it'll be on God's terms. But I'm going to do good to the best of my capacity while I'm alive, and I'm going to work to love and do good works, and solve problems to the maximum of my capacities while I'm alive.
Well, they're essentially the love, you say love, but it's like following the golden rule, right? Treat others as you would like to be treated.
Yeah, like I'm thinking of like the higher, like, agapic, 1 Corinthians 13 stuff, though
Sure.
I speak with the tongue of angels and hath not love, it's like clanging cymbals. And like that idea of, you want to do as the golden rule, exactly, right? You everyone wants to love and be loved. Everyone wants to have
treat others as you would like to be treated.
Exactly, it's a common sense thing, and you got this in different forms.
Now, in saying that, our world today is insane.
Yeah.
We have crossed into a new realm, and I was going to say this earlier. You were going. And I didn't want to interrupt, because I've done that to you a couple times. When it was Venezuela, I think most people looked at the doctrine of, the Monroe Doctrine, like this idea of protecting the Western Hemisphere, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And went, I don't know. To me, it's probably more about resources and what's starting to begin to happen with some of the geopolitical giants, right? But it could be because Maduro's a bad guy, and it could be because he's got dirt on all the people the U.S. wants to arrest, and it could all be all that. But it could just be we need to control what's happening with Venezuela resources and where it's going. Could be. I could be wrong, right? I could be wrong. Mexico, you go proximity to the United States all over again. It can be a bunch of different things. It could be just that the narco state, bad guys. Okay, right? There's lots of different levels of which it could be. As soon as it crosses over to Iran, it's on the other side of the world. And I thought we were ending all of this. Now, once again, everybody knows I have Tom and Alex and all these different people who look geopolitically, and they talk about the significance of making strikes and the importance of getting the City of London and that network dismantled. Like, only time's going to tell, right? I mean, like, are we closer or further away to a world war? Are we in the middle of a world war with the propaganda and everything else going on? I mean, I brought you on, or I wanted to bring you on, to talk about Alberta independence and what other places in Canada were doing and what lessons could be learned. That was generally the idea. And that has been thrown on its head because of what's happening in the rest of the world right now. And I'm like,
here's the thing, right? So actually this kind of plays into it a little bit, because when I alluded to Ben Franklin and company in America having done things, in a wiser, more patient, but more effective manner with a greater degree of understanding of the terrain they were operating in, compared to those in Canada who were acting more out of frustration and a sense of injustice in the 1830s. What I meant to say here, so this actually adds to it a little bit, to have a culture, because to be a sovereign society means you have to have sovereign individuals. To be a sovereign individual means that you have to be able to fully use, or at least as much as possible, the powers of your mind and morality to think in terms of how your actions are the consequence of the past, of the outside world, and have an effect upon both those living far outside of the domain of your physical expression, like what you could experience in your physical small life. There's consequences to our actions that go far beyond that, but also into the future, that what we do or don't do is going to resonate for good or for bad into the future generations, right? There are sins of commission and omission. And that type of just identity, that attitude of taking responsibility and ownership for your thoughts and actions, is a precondition for citizenhood, for sovereignty as an individual. And only the idea of the American Revolution was that we are going to premise a hypothesis that every citizen, not just one sovereign, but everybody can be sovereign. Up until then, it was only one sovereign gave rights to people from the position of a crown of Portugal or Spain or France or England in this case. And we're going to say, okay, that's an outdated idea. We're going to try something new. But that's not self-evident, because most people act stupid much of the time. And so that for that to manifest in a believable way requires that you have a good quality culture, education, that people have you have to have a culture that can bring out this idea of intellectual honesty, rigor in people, but also the more refined emotions. Well, it's very hard to do. That's why Benjamin Franklin had to create, his. He created a lot. I mean, he was a nation builder from the 1750s, 40s, even 30s, even onward to the Revolution. But he built also an awareness, a collaboration amongst people in Russia, in India. So if the American Revolution, for that to be a success, required collaborative networks that had been built up of like-minded freedom lovers in the Mysore Rebellion in India, which was, had Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan writing letters to the Continental Congress saying, okay, you've convinced us, your fight is our fight. And they absorbed a big chunk of the British naval fleets in their rebellions against the empire into India, southern India, that allowed for the Americans to have a space to fight without the
entire British military on their doorstep.
Yeah, and that was done self-consciously.
I stare at Alberta right now with the independence movement.
Yeah.
And I'm like, isn't it interesting timing that the Quebec separatists have just won 4 by-elections in a row?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're pointing out this isn't some brand new thought process, folks. Do you want to fight a one-front war? They do. you want them to have to split up every different direction humanly possible. That might be the way up.
Yeah.
I mean, look at all the world wars. Look at how they made them fight on different fronts and different spots, and they have to do all the different things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have to have a wide open terrain of like-minded people having in Quebec, in Alberta, in Saskatchewan, in the United States,
In BC now, right? Like the idea is spreading.
Mm.
I don't know what that actually, full disclosure, folks. I don't know what that means. I know what it means. I just mean, I don't know how much of a appetite in BC there is. I don't know how much of an appetite, it sounds like in Saskatchewan it's growing. There's been rumors of a couple different places, but Alberta, full stop. I think I've seen it.
Yeah.
You're watching in Quebec 4 by-elections in a row. I mean, that seems pretty self-evident, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's definitely a hunger. There's a ripeness in the time that we shouldn't miss this for sure. And I think that's the thing. If we don't care about what's going on in other parts of the world, if we don't care about those injustices, I think that we lose our ability to be sovereign individuals too, right? Like the moral.
It's true, but
Right.
but we have to be careful. I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe you have your thoughts. If we don't have control of ourselves, we are morons to try and go fix the world.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
Right? Like, I mean, our country is in absolute turmoil right now. It is upside down. We have some of the strangest things going on known to this world. And we stare at other parts and go, wow, they should be doing this. Like, are we really? There's some stuff we need to clean up in our own backyard.
Yes, that's true. That's true. But we still have to have the feeling like if there's a bloodbath of innocent civilians happening abroad, we should be able to still say that's not good. That's
sure. I'm not disagreeing with that.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Well, yeah,
disagreeing
but to mandate how people should live their lives and behave in other parts of the world where we have no business. Absolutely. We should clean up our own act. Absolutely. Before we go out and try to dictate and how the rest of the world behave. But on that note too, right? Like on the issue of Iran, like one thing I noticed that a lot of my friends in Canada, they tend to have this idea that Iran is this evil Mordor, like this dark land of people who just live in enslavement and servitude to mullahs. And it's like, if you actually look at it, like it's totally intolerant. If you don't have Sharia law or something, you're gonna like be executed. And that we've been propagandized heavily. And I think that here, what I'd like to do here, just to showcase, there's actually a lot of Christians and Jews in Iran. There's like 380,000 Christians living in Iran with over 300 churches. Every single Iranian province has Christian churches. And I'm just going to show like a little screen because sometimes it's useful. This is just on my Twitter feed. This is a little sample of a map showcasing the breakdown of the churches in Iran. Now, this person is saying 300,000 Christians living in Iran and 200 to 300 Christian churches. This is, again, every single province in Iran. Why is the media hiding this? There's actually 380,000. According to the UK Ministry of Immigration, there's a lot more than 300,000. There's some beautiful churches, too. Some of the most beautiful churches are in Iran. That's just one thing right there. The other thing, here, I'll just do a end screen share to show a different screen. Here, end that screen. I'm going to pull up here the synagogues. One of the biggest populations of Jews outside of Israel is in Iran. Is in Iran of all places. And there's over 100 synagogues in Iran. Here, it's I don't know if this is the right page, or I might have closed the page I had open. Here's just some Jewish Iranians at synagogue. Another Jewish family at synagogue. That's Angelo Giuliano. You actually might want to interview him. He's very good. He actually works with Brian Berletic, and Brian Berletic's a former U.S. military He was a soldier. He lives in Thailand now. He has the New Atlas channel.
Okay.
Very, very good updates that he delivers on the world situation. But one of the guys he works with is this fellow Angelo Giuliano in Iran.
Small example.
Yeah.
When Trudeau said you can no longer leave the country if you don't have the jibby jab, right?
Yeah.
That actually didn't come into effect until, like, I can't remember if it was weeks after, but it was definitely more than a day. It was quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as it was said, people took it as, oh, you can't, and don't travel or whatnot, right? I actually just got asked, married to an American man. He just got asked the other day, how's traveling in the United States? Like, are they letting you across okay? I'm like, yeah. What are you talking about? Have you ever, like, just go to the border? Like, what are we talking about here? So when you talk about big, giant things like Iran, I mean, you first go to, I thought Mordor was that was a great example. I'm like, yeah, Mordor, this shadowy, no, don't want to go there. Danger everywhere, right? And that's probably been a construct, that has been a construct of our media, right? Yeah. And I just look back through time or history when our relationships with Russia, China, Iran, just take your pick. And you don't have to go that far back. Every time I talk to you, I learn I'm like, oh man, I didn't know about that. And you go, once upon a time, we had really good relations with all these people. And as your relationship starts to degrade, whether this is personally with somebody you know, or you go to something big like civilizations, what happens? You start to demonize them and turn them into this construct that probably just is not remotely true. And yet that's what we all vision as Mordor. And so we sit here and we go, we're bombing Mordor, baby. And all those bad people, all those goblins are getting it. And then you realize, no, there's just people there trying to live. Yeah. And that doesn't mean that there aren't bad people there, because I always come back to Armstrong, Luongo, Craner, all these different things. There's different factions in all these places, including Russia, including the United States, including Canada, all the, you got different factions that are at war in all the different governments. It's just, I sit and I look at Iran. I go, I mean, it's on the other side of the world. Yes, I condemn what's going on there.
Yeah.
But I don't know we can't fix what's happening in our own country.
Yeah.
No,
I agree. I agree with you. It's more just part of the problem, I guess, is that we can't fix what's going on in most parts of the world, but part of we participate in allowing for unnecessary, avoidable ignorance in our minds, or allowing for prejudices to stay alive inside of our minds that are false. We participate in being purveyors of false popular.
When you come back to Benjamin Franklin and what he was doing, right?
Yeah.
And how he was a nation builder and everything. One of the things I was going to hop in and say was, like, debate, conversation, expanding your brain. Like listening to different things, you go, no, that doesn't make sense, or that does make sense, right. Or on and on and on.
Right.
We need that. We definitely need that. We need to, like, it's easy to go one way or another. Yeah, bomb Iran, or don't bomb Iran. But if you don't have the conversation in the middle of it, it's like, how do you actually know?
No,
like,
exactly.
We need this more than ever. We need to have discussions and conversations on some of the most difficult topics under the sun. And that's why I appreciate guys like you hopping on and giving a different perspective, because some people hate you for it. Some people love you for it. I enjoy the fact you speak differently than others, Matt. That's what I think. And I appreciate you hopping on today.
Well, thank you very much, Shaun, for having me on. And I always appreciate these conversations too. And I do hope that the spirit of dialogue and discussion around ideas that make us uncomfortable can become popular again, because that's what made the American Revolution happen, like you pointed out. And hopefully we can get that spirit back before it's too late.
I think we can. Matt, until we see you March 28th, stay safe. Looking forward to seeing you here soon enough. I think that's going to be a fun day. And once again, looking forward to seeing you. It's always a treat to get to see people that I do this with in person.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's going to be fun.